Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Psychedelic Medicine Podcast. I'm Dr. Lynn Marie Morsky, your guide on this journey. And today we're going to be discussing Guruism and cult-like social dynamics in psychedelic practices with Joseph Holcomb Adams. Joseph is an ethicist who specializes in issues related to psychedelics, altered states, and transformative experiences. Now, before we get to our discussion with Joseph, just a reminder that the Psychedelic Medicine Podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing here is to be construed as medical or legal advice. And as always, your reminder that if you are a clinician of any sort, doctor, nurse, PA, licensed counselor, MFT, LCSW, and you would like to learn more about psychedelic medicine, please join the Psychedelic Medicine Association. It is our mission to get clinicians across the board up to speed on psychedelics so you feel comfortable having conversations with your patients when they come asking about psychedelics, because we know they are coming with those questions. If you'd like to learn more, check out psychedelicmedicineassociation.org. Now, without further ado, thanks so much for joining us today, Joseph.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. Looking
I
forward to this.
Me too. I was very excited when I saw Jules post your article. Jules Evans is a past guest. We had him on talking about the Challenging Experiences Project, and he's always got his finger on the pulse of the important but not often talked about subjects. So when you both put out this article, I was very excited because absolutely guruism and cult-like social dynamics are prevalent but under discussed in psychedelics. So very excited for this conversation today. I would love to start off if I could have you give us some general definitions. We'll start with guruism.
Yeah. So guruism, I guess, or first I should kind of define what we mean by guru. So a guru is a charismatic teacher, mentor, guide, even kind of a prophet or religious leader, um, who is seen by their followers, their devotees, as having special, extraordinary, or advanced knowledge, awareness, skills, powers, expertise, and is the subject of devotion, veneration, even submission by these followers. And any a guru can they could be in all sorts of different fields. But spirituality is a very common area where we see gurus. And so guruism is basically an interpersonal dynamic where one party takes on or steps into a guru-like or guru role, and then the other person or people take on a devotee, follower, disciple-like role. Um, and it's kind of like a two-way dance. There's a quote from a paper on environmentalist gurus. It says a guru can only exist in the presence of an audience. So it's really this two-way dynamic where both sides kind of create each other.
That makes sense. And what since we're breaking it down, how would you define, I guess, then a cult and then cultic social dynamics?
Yeah. So, the term cult is notoriously a controversial word and concept. Um, and there've been various definitions over time, and even recently, like various scholars have different, but often very kind of definitions that approach different sides of the same elephant. And when in our paper, we're looking at a cult as basically a group that has a high degree of devotion to a person, idea, thing, purpose, and that also has a high degree, significant degree of influence over the members. In some cases, up to the point of totalistic authoritarian control. Um, and Yeah, so and cults, they can display like a lot of, like they can display different kinds of characteristics. Some, might display, a few of them. Some of them might display all of them. And so, we have kind of a list here of some common kind of characteristics of cults and cult-like groups. So, It might be a high level of social cohesiveness. There might be shared mystical or trance experiences. Often, in a ritual kind or some kind of ceremonial practice. There might be new identities that are formed by the members of the group, identities that are kind of subsumed into the group identity, that are formed by the needs of the group. And you might also have high levels of obedience and loyalty being demanded, or if not demanded, at least kind of cultivated. We might have a charismatic leader, as mentioned. The center of the devotion might actually be a person, and you often is. That's what people tend to associate with cults. And we might have a sense of kind of specialness or kind of elitism of the group. There might be this sense of like, oh, us in this group, we are part of this initiated, awakened kind of subset of humanity or something. And and everybody else is, they're not part of the part of this little pocket of enlightened awareness. And very connected. Another characteristic is, you often see the group might have an exalted, grandiose sense of their mission. They like, it might be a messianic utopian kind of thing, like, oh, we're going to save the world, or something that's smaller but still grandiose, like, oh, like, we are like the practitioners of the the most enlightened like way to understand consciousness through the method that the leader made or something. um, and and then also really common is and that Janja Lalich talks about this as a transcendent belief system is a very common feature of groups that we identify as cults. And a transcendent belief system is it's like a self-sealed ideology that it gives an answer to everything. It's like all sorts of aspects of life can sort of be approached and made sense of with this ideology, this belief system. And there might be kind of an ends justify the means logic that come out of it. Whether the end is spreading that ideology or saving the world, whatever. And so yeah, so cult, it's a fuzzy concept. And that's a technical term, actually, for fuzzy concept. So it's the application varies a lot. It's hard. You can't really say like, oh, and there's a lot of there's a continuum of cult likeness. Like there's groups, and a lot of there are groups like, say, Charlie Manson's family, where it's like very clearly they're here on this end of the high control, like total cult spectrum or whatever. But tons and tons of groups that are meaningfully described as cult like. It actually, there's utility in describing them that way. It might be more so in like this like gray area, this like of this continuum. And they might have some of the characteristics I mentioned. They might have like most of them, but just like not to an extreme degree. So there's this broad kind of spectrum of cult likeness. um and so cultic social dynamics are they're exhibited by groups that are cult like.
Got it. Some of those like groupthink things you were describing before, the ideologies and maybe following somebody who has either declared themselves the guru or not, or maybe they have declared them, that person or that ideology or that group of people, the guru. And I think it's worth putting a point here. They can be separate, right? You can have guruism without a cult, because one person could be just devoted to that, could find that person as their guru. That's not a whole cult that's developed. So that these are things that are separate but can often seemingly interact, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at a certain point it can become matters of semantics, but some I think Janja Lelich was actually saying, and something I was listening to a little while ago, of the notion of a guru disciple relationship could kind of be considered maybe a two-person cult,
Oh, interesting.
or even in some cases like an abusive relationship with a narcissistic person, like, and so it could be but we use the term, and most of us associate the term cult with a group, not just two people, but it's a similar thing going on, just in a one-on-one situation there.
Yeah,
um
that makes sense. And then, applicable to our podcast, how can, we'll start with guruism, become amplified within psychedelic practices?
yeah, so there's basically like two kind of fundamentally interconnected ways that this happens. Um, and so on one end, it's you have the psychedelics amplifying, say, a practice participant's tendency to step into the devotee follower disciple role. And then you have on the other end this amplification of the facilitator's tendency, excuse me, to step into a guru-like role. And when you got both of those going on, then you have this dance, this feedback loop that can amplify itself quite a bit. And you could have it's a little tiny seed of the potentiality for this guruism dynamic to arise. When it's there, due to that mutually reinforcing dance, it's like it can be very easy for a little tiny seed to spin into something. So so it's very important to think of how for people to think of how just this could emerge kind of sneakily and organically. But let me get back to how this amplification happens. So on the side of the participant, becoming more disposed to step into the devotee follower role, we're basically looking at a few different factors here. So the first kind of thing that's happening is the psychedelic experience is there. The psychedelic is providing this extraordinary, awe-inspiring, mystical, ecstatic experience that can be very, very easily, and it's, while someone is in the care of another person. And so it can be very easy for the participant to basically like associate and identify that this open, this mind opening experience, this earth shattering spiritual experience with this person who facilitated it for them, who's right there, who seems to know all about this space of consciousness that they're experiencing. um and and then and also too, it's like and it can seem like, oh, this person, they caused this, or they brought this experience to me, they are responsible for this. And and then there's also an aspect of these, the psychedelic providing these extraordinary, mystical spiritual experiences, is it can the experience can sort of provide, it can provide a sense of, or I guess it's say like say that in the experience some phenomena appear that seem to be supernatural or paranormal, and we're agnostic here about what is going on with stuff like that, but it does, what matters is that, if the phenomena seem supernatural and paranormal, and it seems like the facilitator like knows all about that, or like, knows how to navigate it, or is even causing it, like they are doing some magic or something. These kinds of experiences can really, provide and reinforce a sense that, oh, this facilitator, they have these special powers, they have this special awareness, um, and that's it's in other situations where you're not taking a substance that often can bring experiences of that nature. It's like it's going to be not as easy for a person to start getting that sense of, oh, whoa, like this person is really a powerful shaman or whatever, So, and then the second kind of way that psychedelics can, amplify the participants' devotee tendencies is through inducing hypersuggestibility. Uh, a lot of my work is focused on suggestibility, so I always love talking about this one. And so, there's a lot of ways that suggestibility affect things, but really one of the biggest ones that, and that we identify in the chapter is this is that basically it can, when the participant goes into this experience where they're go into this very suggestible state, um, that basically through influences from before the session, like through the preparatory sessions, through language that's used for all the framing and whatnot, and of course signals and whatnot that are given during, but basically the all these suggestive influences can cause the suggestible participant to have an experience that basically seems to confirm the beliefs or belief system of the facilitator. Um, and if that happens, that could make the participant go, "Oh my God, they were right. They understood the fundamental patterns of how our souls hang together," or something like that. And we have there's this really great quote from Sidney Cohen from the 60s, actually, that I think really illustrates this well. So it goes, it is curious how under LSD the fondest theories of the therapist are confirmed by the patient. Freudian symbols come out of the mouths of patients with Freudian analysts. Those who have Jungian therapists deal with the collective unconscious and with archetypal images. The patient senses the frame of reference to be employed, and his associations and dreams are molded to it. So that was in the 60s, so we were noticing that. And so you can see how, whatever the framework is that the facilitator has, and especially imagine that they've kind of developed some healing modality, some psycho spiritual kind of method, idea of how things work or whatever, and they have it in courses and books and stuff like that, and then you do a session with them and go into the suggestible psychedelic experience. And then just like, the Freudian or the Jungian patients, you're like, oh my God, they were right. Because your experience was shaped by suggestion. And we call that experiential verification is a term that's been used. And then, this is a really big one too, is the way that psychedelics amplify transference and projection. So, the participant might start, kind of perceiving the therapist or the facilitator, as in kind of a parental way, or some kind of archetypal way of like, an angelic figure, or some kind of wise sage. And so this amplified transference protection. This is something that's written and spoken and taught quite a bit in the field of psychedelic therapy. It's widely considered to be something that's really important for everybody to become aware of, both a participant and a facilitator. And so it's a big part of how a participant can start to go, oh man, like this person is, start putting them on that pedestal. And, I'll I'll say too a couple just I found a paper. This wasn't put in the chapter because I found the paper after we wrote the chapter. But there is a paper called "Oxytocin Modulates Charismatic Influence in Groups." So and we know that, and so the paper found it was double blind study, and they did intranasal oxytocin, um, and they found that the group that was given the oxytocin, they actually uh, you know displayed responses and rated their encounter with this charismatic figure, this person who's trained to behave in this charismatic way. Basically the charismatic influence was significantly higher with those who received oxytocin. And we know that MDMA facilitates the release of oxytocin. And there's at least one paper that found it with LSD. And I think there's some folks studying, looking at psilocybin. And so who knows? Maybe some of these oxytocin effects of these substances actually are increasing that charisma. And then there's of course the metaphor of the duckling imprinting, where there's this notion of I think Gould Dolan has done research and written about it. This notion of the critical period being reopened by psychedelics, and the critical period being this time when learning and neuroplasticity are particularly there's a lot of potential there for the neuroplasticity is enhanced and whatnot. And the notion of that it's when we're young children, that we have this critical period window so that we can bond and learn from our parents and whatnot. And the kind of there's very famously there's this there's the example of ducklings having this like critical period window where sometime after they hatch from the egg, it's like whoever or whatever happens to be there right there in that little critical window, they will bond with and treat as their mother and start following it around. It could be a cat, it could be a puppet, it could be a person. And so, perhaps, whether it's related to critical period reopening or not, you could just think of the metaphor of a person under the influence of psychedelics kind of having just whoever the facilitator is the person who's there, just like the puppet that the that the duckling bonds with. So you could see how the psychedelic is going to amplify the person. It's like the duckling follows the person around after they bond to it, and then the participant follows the guru around.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. That is, I mean, so many reasons that this is set up for that relationship to develop in a not necessarily healthy way. We re-released the episode on psychedelic self-absorption last week to prepare for this one. So when you were discussing, and you may get into this next, but from the facilitator side, their propensity to have this inflated perhaps sense of self and ego, which is perfect for the one who wants to imprint, because they're like, you've got this larger than life person who's oozing confidence and
Mhm.
may overstep into where like, no, I am the one providing this healing. Like what I had written a note to myself to bring up the fact that like, and I bring this up as often as I can, but one of my pet peeves, and this is again I always like to credit people who I learned from, but I don't remember the person. But you as the facilitator are not the healer. I see so many facilitators that call themselves healers. Now somebody's going to say, but in the South they call themselves curanderos. Sure, all of that, but just in my English vernacular here, when I see that the person is referring to themselves as the healer, I think it sets up that relationship so much more readily because instead of saying you are the healer, the medicine is the tool that you're using to help heal, and I am facilitating that process, they now think that that person is the healer. And that's where I think a lot of the devotion and the following. And then, as you know, if anybody heard our episode about the survivors of psychedelic abuse episode with Erica Siegel, she talked about financial abuse. And that relationship is such a setup for financial abuse because if that one person is your healer and nobody else can do it, man, what could they not charge you to be healed, right? So
Mhm.
this is why, I love that we're having this conversation to keep people aware of these possibilities so that they're hopefully less likely to step into these situations or realize these situations if they have come up. Was there anything else you wanted to say about you talked a lot about the why the participant is at risk. Anything else you wanted to say from the facilitator side?
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, just like you point out when you're talking about the narcissism and the ego inflation stuff. Yeah, I mean, so I just described how on the participant side, there's this enhanced tendency step into the devotee role. So, but yeah, the other end of it, psychedelics can amplify the tendency of the facilitator to step into that guru role. And a big part of it, is in response to this veneration, worshipful kind of, stance that the participants are taking to them, whether it's immediately in a one-on-one thing, like while it's happening, or if a facilitator has, they've had lots of participants over the years and like, this, and they've kept getting this kind of response, this reverence and this, oh my gosh, like, there's such a powerful healer shaman, then this can this can kind of feed and amplify their own inflated sense of their powers, knowledge, abilities. And they could be overcome by like if it's in the session, especially their counter transference reactions to the participants transference and projection, and this is something that a lot of teachers of facilitators talk about, how this is one of the more challenging aspects of the work, is not being drawn into some of this countertransference stuff, and so especially if the facilitator, if they have narcissistic traits, if they're a malignant narcissist, they're probably extremely eagerly stepping into this. They're just, oh yeah, like of course I can read your soul, and come sign up for all of my stuff, and come be part of my little web of vampiric victims. But then also if people are not necessarily a malignant narcissist, but just more of a less of the sociopathic variety, that's still very easy for them to fall into this yes, I am what these participants think I am. And then also, like, even as people who aren't narcissists at all, like no one would ever think of them that way, or but they just have some unconscious perhaps need or desire, motivation to be seen as just a wise teacher, or it's people, just human. It's not an uncommon or a or unforgivable thing for human beings to feel like, yeah, like I some part of themselves wanting to be seen like that, and so though that little seed, that little unconscious seed, can be like given a ton of water and sunshine by the psychedelic practice participant, kind of, and then of course if the so it's very challenging. And we have another quote from Sidney Cohen here about this, where it says, the ability to induce the transcendental state is a heady and powerful endowment. only well-adjusted therapists without personal needs to play God will be unaffected by the potency inherent in the situation, So they noticed it way back then. And then, of course, if the facilitator, before even getting all this, affirmation, feedback, veneration, if they already have a big inflated sense of their spiritual knowledge and ability and whatnot, then that's already right there for, giving them a lot of pushing them into step into that guru role. And this can happen from their own psychedelic use, and there's lots of folks have written and discussed about how not there's it's not just ego dissolution that can happen with these substances. It's also like it happens all the time that it can cause ego inflation. That people can become really grandiose. They could get the sense that they're receiving these special revelations, or they're that they might even there's all sorts of people out there have some kind of people start thinking that they're some kind of reincarnated master, or even that they're a Jesus figure or something like that. There's all sorts of strange, grandiose, ego inflated reactions can happen from people taking these substances and feeling like, oh my God, I just saw the fundamental nature of reality. And so if you got somebody who's, has been taking a lot of psychedelics and been having these kind of grandiose ego inflation responses, and they're, serving participants who you are giving them a bunch of veneration, then those dovetail together so that they really step into that guru role. And then you get the whole dance feedback loop with the participants, and that can just spin out into some very dangerous territory sometimes, where
Yeah.
a lot of control is being given to this facilitator.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants to dig more into this, just a reminder, we did an episode called Navigating Psychedelic Narcissism, where we talk all about like the reasons that you said the ego may be dissolved and then it builds itself up stronger because it doesn't want
Mhm.
to dissolve, right? Like the nature of our psyche is that we want to have an intact ego. So it's like, no, 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 let me come back stronger, right? And so Adam, who's the guest on that, and also the guest on psychedelic self-absorption, goes into a lot of why that happens. So yes, thank you for elucidating how that's kind of just the perfect storm for these kinds of things to happen. And so if you could further talk about how psychedelics can amplify those cultish social dynamics. We talked about kind of like like you said, the one-on-one dynamics there, but what about the more the groups?
Yeah, totally. Um, so basically, already the Guruism amplification stuff that can, if there's a charismatic leader of a group and that's a guru figure right there, you can, the amplified Guruism can amplify the cultishness of that group. But there's also other ways that that we write about in the chapter and that I'll discuss right here. So, you know, basically psychedelics, a big part of how they can amplify cultic social dynamics is through uh, being part of these ecstatic rituals, these ecstatic group rituals, these shared psychedelic experiences in these ceremonial contexts, um, and so this these group rituals can have the effects of basically, you know, few amplifying, intensifying, reinforcing group cohesion, particularly insular group cohesion. It can really, really bond people. It can fuse their identities together and to the group. Um, and there's tons of literature in non-psychedelic literature study in like anthropology and social psychology and whatnot about how ecstatic rituals are a tool for the groups all over the world use to reinforce their internal unity, and so it's you have that sort of thing happening, but dramatically intensified by these psychedelics. Um, and also these group rituals, they can function in a way that basically transmits and reinforces the group's belief system or ideology. And through, you think of, you can, thinking back to like when I was talking about the hypersuggestibility in the amplifying guruism thing, you think of, how the facilitators belief system, just like the Freudians and the Jungians, it can get, the participant can get kind of indoctrinated into it through this hypersuggestibility, through the experiential verification. It's like a similar thing can happen, and I'd say much more powerfully actually when there's a group, like we are social critters, and we are, I mean, all of language, belief systems in general, that's it all comes from, from our, our group social existence, and so we really intensely and easily respond to the what people around us are all thinking and wanting us to think and whatnot. We have these instincts to align with that. And so when you got a bunch of people who are all, tripping together in the context of having some kind of shared belief system that specifically surrounds, what's happening. It's like a belief system that is an interpretation of what psychedelic experience even is about or whatever. It's very easy for people to, get pulled into that shared belief system and have it very deeply entrenched into them. And you can see how all this, it could, all of these aspects of what the shared psychedelic group rituals do, it can both reinforce people, the people, the gravity that's pulling and people who are already in the group, but it could also be something that's used for initiation and conversion as well. You're a new person coming into some group, and some psychedelic community of some kind, and you take that, drink the substance or eat the mushrooms or whatever in the ceremony after you've had, been to all these meetings, where you kind of learn about, the how the group thinks, what the kind of religion is there, and then you could very easily get pulled in, and then bam, they've recruited, they got another one, um,
Yes.
and so yeah, so, and anthropologists, as I said, have long observed that ecstatic rituals seem to be this, ancient, universal, characteristically human activity that, promotes social cohesion and whatnot. So, when we're, engaging in psychedelic enhanced ecstatic group rituals, what we're doing here is we're basically using powerful neuropharmacological tools to help us really powerfully tap into these potentialities that are, in our primordial nature as social, instinctively religious beings, and so it's this very, that's what we're messing around with there, and so you can see there's kind of like a double-edged sword there, where, it's there, this is an opportunity for deep fulfillment and connection, and, individual and collective flourishing. But it's also something that, it can bind you to a group of people in a way that could be problematic, and so it's important to understand before, for people to understand before they get into situations like this, that it's, they're they're going into something that has this incredible power to connect them with the other people in the group, to enculturate them into how that group thinks. And if that group has a lot of cultic stuff going on, if that group ends up, and then the inner circles, there's, a lot of, there's authoritarian control. Once you hang around the group a lot, things can get pretty gnarly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good thing to point out is that, there are a lot of places where psychedelics are done in retreat settings, and that is a group and so if we have listeners out there looking at going to one of those, please evaluate with that in mind. Like that, what kind of dynamic does this seem like a dynamic that is, let's say, neutral on the healing scale, or does this seem like a group that has an agenda of some sort? There's something beyond just we are bringing you qualified psychedelic practitioners in this nice retreat setting. What else is going on there? The sad thing is the onus is on the person to do so much investigating in these. There isn't a great system set up yet to vet these, but that's why we have the podcast, right? To like try to put
Hmm.
things on people's radar. Joseph, as we wrap up the important part here, thank you for elucidating the setup for these things to develop. Can you tell us a little bit about what can be done to address the risks of guruism and cultic social dynamics in psychedelic practices and organizations?
Yeah, totally. So, there's safeguards like, licenses and, supervision relationships, peer consultation relationships for facilitators, ethics codes, standards of practice, and all of that stuff is very important and can be a big help. Especially, if say requirements for informed consent or something, like say we're talking about, a regulated psychedelic medicine situation. It's probably, like we're probably going to need, I think a lot of help could be done, or a lot of benefit could come here, risk mitigation through, say, requiring facilitators or, retreats or whatever to kind of have this very rigorous informed consent process where people, get to learn about what it is that they're signing up for, how there's, this potential for, say, like if you think back to like with the duckling metaphor, if people are, it's required that they're made aware of potentialities like that, so that if they start, getting pulled into, oh my gosh, this facilitator, they can have some kind of meta awareness, at least afterwards or whatever, where they can interpret all of that in terms of, oh, okay, like that, my experience doesn't mean that person is just saw into my soul and is this unique special kind of thing. It's like that could have been anybody or something, or with the, say, what I was talking about with the the psychedelic rituals, kind of tapping into our primordial social bonding stuff. It's like you'd want to, if people are informed about that beforehand, that can help them interpret their experiences, choose whether they want to do the experience with that group, or maybe another one. Um, and but so, you know, but there's always going to be, these kinds of, safeguards and regulations of this kind. There are limits, obviously, to how much they can help. And I think really the most important kind of risk mitigation, uh, you know uh, factors or whatever, it is education, and the awareness that comes from it. And that's both on the side of the facilitators or church leaders or whatever. It's like, having being educated about what they are dealing with there, like what, being educated about the temptations to, step into the guru role or whatever, and how to navigate that. And Kylea Taylor has some really important work about how facilitators, can become more aware of their own like shadow motivations and whatnot. And that's a really important thing because just talking about a little tiny seed of, oh, I do want to be seen as a powerful healer, like a deep inside, it's like you want to be aware of that seed so that it doesn't just start growing into this big vine without you realizing it. And so that, education for facilitators and church leaders and stuff about all that stuff is important. But I think perhaps, I mean, I don't know if I'd say more important, but it's all important. But, for participants, and for society at large and for family members of participants, I think it's really important for people who are engaging in the space or engaging in practices or thinking about engaging in psychedelic practices, psychedelic therapy, that they become educated about what they are signing up for and what to look out for. There's a really great document, the psychedelic safety flags document that Epic and the psychedelic survivors group that they've created. So so we need more and more resources like that people can check out and we need more. And in order to make a lot of these resources and make them be really useful, we need to, really listen to survivors, whistleblowers. We need to learn more and more about, all the ways that stuff goes down when things get gnarly, and be able to, like inform our educational resources by all those cases, and I mentioned like family members. It's like we want to also be able to educate people who are around someone who's a participant. So even if that person is participating in like a psychedelic church, or they keep going back to some facilitator or something who seems kind of guru-y, it's like if that person might not realize what's going on when they're all swept up into it, and their friends and family, it might be beneficial for them to be aware of kind of like what signs to look for. And yeah, so it's who knows how it'll all shake out, but we're Guruism and cultic social dynamics are that risk is never going to go away with psychedelics. And as the space becomes more and more part of contemporary society, and we figure out how to deal with psychedelic medicine, I think that I can't stress enough the importance of there being a rollout of educational resources for people who are engaging in all this. So
Absolutely. Could not agree more. And speaking of, so you referred to it a few times, but I should have set this up at the beginning, is the reason that we had you and you on is because you and Jules had written a chapter of a book. I think I was calling it an article, but it is a book chapter. So could you please tell people where to find that chapter and then any other work that you have?
yeah, yeah, I need to I need to put the book put the chapter on my website. I need to update that. But you can look on my website. I promise I'll update it there. And honestly, if you
What is your
just
website?
josephholcombadams.com.
Okay.
And then you could also just search. You could if you just search, you know, Guruism and cultic social dynamics and psychedelic practices and organizations. That should get you there. Um, I
Well,
don't think there's a whole lot of other combinations of those words
I
out
don't
there.
think so. And we'll put it in the show notes for those of you who check out the show notes. But Joseph, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for the work that you two have done to put a fine point on this. And like you said, education is important. So thank you for being part of that educational effort. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on here. Really passionate about talking about this stuff, and I hope that I haven't run on too many times,
That,
and
you were
uh,
fantastic. I so much appreciate it. And for everybody else out there, until next time.